Well, at the moment, what we are hearing from world leaders is mostly hand-wringing. There's not much being proposed that is solid and that is actionable. There's a lot of expression of regret and sorrow for the way things are unfolding. Some of the regional parties, China, Russia, are preparing to, as we understand, recognize the Taliban leadership, recognize the Taliban government, and trying to move ahead with that. There's some talk in Germany, in Europe more generally, about doing the right thing by those Afghans who stood by NATO and Western forces. But there's not a whole lot of actual, there are not a lot of serious proposals on the table for helping out Afghans who now find themselves caught in a national horror that many of them hope would never be repeated.
Yeah, and Bobby, a lot of people talking about, waiting to hear from President Biden on this specifically, and sort of blaming the rapid rollout of troops from the country. I'm curious, sort of, to get your take on that. Is it just sort of the way that this withdrawal will happen? Is that what's to blame, or is there something bigger, deeper in here that we need to be looking at?
But Jen, a catastrophe of such gigantic proportions is so big, there's enough blame to go around to all the 4 American presidents who've sort of overseen this sort of the Afghan occupation and operation. So you start with President Bush Jr., who pushed the U.S. into the United States, responding to 9/11, but without any plan of what to do once the United States had defeated the Taliban. There was no plan. The plans were made up as people went along. What began as a military operation became a nation-building operation. Then you had President Obama, who, during his administration, allowed the corrosion of the Afghan state, the corruption that seeped into every core of the Afghan state, despite American supervision, and the really quite poor planning and preparation of the Afghan security forces. We talk of the large numbers, 350,000 Afghan soldiers. They were clearly not very well trained, not very well motivated, and some of that blame has to go to the Obama administration. Then comes the Trump administration, which essentially does what Trump does, which is take a blowtorch to everything, recognizes, in effect, legitimizes the Taliban by negotiating directly with them and pushing the Afghan government out of the negotiating process. And then finally, you now have the Biden administration, which very hastily, with very little careful planning, abandons the field in Afghanistan, leaving our allies caught in now this national nightmare. So there's enough blame to go along, but in the best American political tradition, the buck stops with the man in the White House right now. That's got to be Joe Biden.
So then what does he need to say, Bobby? I mean, we're still hearing from the administration that they are defending sort of the withdrawal of troops. I mean, what does President Biden need to convey to the rest of the world?
Well, I suspect he doesn't have very much to say. That is why we're not hearing from him. This is a very crucial moment. We should be hearing from the American president. We're not. We're not even hearing from Jen Psaki, who's on vacation. We're only really hearing from, directly on the record, from the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, who seems to be blaming the Afghans for their predicament. That's not a satisfactory way for any administration to go about this. The President of the United States, if he does indeed defend his decisions, should have the courage to do so in front of the country, rather than promising that he will address Americans in a few days, which is all we've gotten out of the White House so far.
Do you think it will be integral for the U.S. to engage with the Taliban? As we've spoken about for a few minutes on the show, they are pledging to take a little bit more of a moderate stance. We're seeing China and Russia consider them as legitimate leaders. I mean, does the U.S. need to do the same?
I think the U.S. has put itself in a position where it has no other option, realistically. The economic sanctions that the U.S. has placed on many of the Taliban leadership will probably remain, but I think you will find that in time the Biden administration will follow the lead of the Russians and the Chinese, which is quite telling in itself, and recognize the Afghan government. The United States has a moral responsibility to Afghanistan, to Afghan people. If recognizing the Taliban government is the only way to exercise that moral responsibility, then so be it. Then that is what the Biden administration should do. At the moment, though, all the cards are in the Taliban's hands, and that's largely because the United States has left the table.
All right. We have to leave it there, Bobby. That is Bloomberg Opinions. Bobby Ghosh, thank you, as always, for joining us this morning. All right, now here